Good morning. Thanks for coming. My name is Lexis Shontz. I'm the president and founder of a company called Solvent Direct. Solvent Direct is a dedicated supply chain for cannabis extraction. So we supply in most mature markets, California, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, Arizona, Oklahoma, you name it. All of the consumable lab supply that's being used on a regular basis to produce cannabis extracts, so pulling oil from plant material. And I've been doing it for quite a while. I've been servicing the cannabis industry for almost 20 years, and then Solvent Direct I incorporated in 2018. But one thing that we've been seeing, and we've been seeing it more lately, is that quality matters. There is not much of a cannabis sommelier to sit there and tell you what the difference is between a $1,000 bottle of wine and a $10 bottle of wine is. What makes those differences? And what we're seeing is that it has a lot to do with the operators and the quality of the inputs, like biomass, like solvents, as well as the operator that's producing it. And as a company that's been supplying these types of operators for a while, I think I have some unique visibility into it. In partnership with Busy Bee, because that's one of the leading equipment manufacturers. Boris is here in Hawaii. He's running a couple minutes late, but he's the CEO and founder of Busy Bee, which is one of the high-end closed-loop system manufacturers. So they make systems that run solvents that I distribute that create oils and cannabis concentrates. So hopefully he rolls in here any minute and he can share a little bit about what he does. But like I said, Solvent Direct, as industry veterans, we've seen a lot of industrial supply standards hurt people, products, brand reputations over the years. And I think the reason we saw it relevant for Hawaii and they reached out was because you guys, it's such a young market, it's a new market for extracts here, that there's a real opportunity to do it the right way and maybe prevent some of what we've seen in more mature markets. Are the corporate operators and the MSOs coming in and producing crap product at scale and large volumes and flooding the market with it, and by driving down price and kind of rushing to the bottom of the barrel, hurting the craft operators and the cottage industry that the business was really built on. And so how can we protect that? And maybe not end up with all $10 bottles of wine. Although $10 bottles of wine have a place, there's also $1,000 bottles of wine up there in Napa Valley that people will pay for. And so as we're kind of an emerging industry, how can we get people excited about it? So why does quality matter? Well, high quality extracts especially. The sustainability of the cannabis extract market will thrive on the quality in the face of corporate cannabis. And some of the other things that we're seeing, like benzene liability lawsuits. There's a large class action suit up in Washington right now, and Cureleaf has pulled out of 3 big cannabis markets in the U.S.: California, Colorado, and Oregon. Yeah. No, those are different topics, and I'm gonna touch on those in a second. I think it sounds like you're up on it. There's been talk about Russians being invested in Cureleaf, and that might have something to do with it. But I don't know that is true.
I think the markets they pulled out of are unique in China.
Yes, yeah. So there's I mean, and other multi-state operators have pulled out of those markets recently also. Like Halo Cannabis is I think an international company that has pulled out of California and stopped production. They're still in Oregon, but I think that they're slowing that down. And so what you're seeing is kind of these shareholder-backed businesses really realizing maybe that their model wasn't successful, or it's not what the industry wants or what the industry demands. And what you find out there is that a lot of connoisseurs, that they want the high-end product, they want something that's built on quality. And so what differentiates an operator that makes something that's quality from one that doesn't? And this is where Boris would come in with his equipment and some of the things that would go through the extraction process. And of course, we're starting with soil to oil, from the biomass or the material that you're using as a throughput to the solvent that you're throwing into that system, to the oil that's coming out, and then the person that's operating that system has a profound impact on what comes out the other end. It's not, you know, that those are some of the things that make the differences. Hopefully when Boris gets here, he can talk a little bit about what he does that makes his systems more effective. But I can tell you that he's got a lot of unique technological advancements that give better visibility to the operator into what's happening inside of a column or a closed loop system. And is that for the guys that I don't know in the audience? Do you know what a closed loop system is and kind of, yeah, so
you're talking about just hydrocarbons or ethanol and everything?
Yeah, sure, or an ethanol, you know, a centrifuge, anything that's being used to extract. Just it sounds like you guys do then. I don't need to. When Boris gets here, we'll get you a crash course into what those systems are, but the two main systems for extracting oil from plants using chemicals or solvents would be your ethanol and your butane, your solvent or hydrocarbon. And so those two methods are really effective at being very selective in the extraction process. So we all know about rosin and water hash and things like that. It's less selective. Using thermodynamics and temperature and solvent, you can pull very narrow cannabinoids out of the plant material and get an end result that you're looking for. So there's a lot of demand right now for connoisseurs that are producing diamonds, like THCA diamonds, and that's something that you can't just squish on a press. It's something that you've got to use chemistry, essentially, to extract from that plant material and create something that's very concentrated and pure. So those two systems, whether it's ethanol or hydrocarbon butane, are the most common ways to use chemicals to extract. And since we're talking about quality, I guess it is relevant to kind of just touch on, there's a lot of stigma around solvent extractions. The butane has a bad rap in some places because it's, I think it's a misnomer that there's residual solvent left in extract. And so when you're extracting with butane, you're going to end up with something that has been contaminated by the butane.
It's actually illegal in this state for dispensaries. They call it propane here. They're not allowed to use butane in this state.
Ah, okay.
Caveat, somebody got into law earlier.
Gotcha. I think there's some ethanol. Well, in any event, remediating the solvent back out of the mix, the slurry, when you've created an extraction is going to be important. So a lot of the stigma that's around butane, and I don't know if that's what informs the legislation here, but a lot of that's kind of misguided by things that, you know, headlines where maybe an operator wasn't operating correctly and didn't extract all of or remediate all of that solvent back out of their extract. So hopefully maybe we can change that.
Yeah, it was a caveat, somebody getting that in early on. It might not, that's still true. When they first legislated, they specifically banned butane because the butane honey fires we were in our houses are really over the system.
Sure.
But there's just a certain factor, just anything you do to jam the system up.
I've
there's
heard,
a lot of that
yeah.
in Hawaii. Any possibility stopping it, they'll throw anything they can.
I don't want to out anybody, especially if I don't know exactly what legislation is, but I can tell you that we actively ship butane to Hawaii. So there must be some people operating with it, but my understanding is the license they have is very limited. There's only like 8 of them in the state or something. And, I think we've seen that in the Boris. We've seen that in a lot of different markets. So that's something that's not too far-fetched, and hopefully they will loosen that as time goes on. So this is Boris Kogon, president and founder of
it's an intimate stuff.
Benzene Bee Extraction. We were just going through what makes the difference between a quality extract and a lower quality extract, some of the licensing and legislation that kind of has slowed things down.
What did you say?
Well, I don't want to bore the audience by repeating myself, so what we've really discovered is that there's demand for high quality product, that some of the corporate-backed, shareholder-backed MSOs have suffered because they are putting out lower quality products. And I was just going to get into some of the things.
Could I add something?
Sure.
Okay. So how many of you guys are operators in here? Boom, boom. Okay. So there's kind of an 80-20 rule in the world, like the world of real estate, the world of business. I'd like to say that like your highest quality extract is going to be 20% of your sales, and then your mid quality extract is going to be the bulk of your sales. But they work together because your high quality extract establishes your brand and your name and your respect. So anybody can make mid quality products. In fact, mid quality products become commoditized very quickly in mature markets. The price for THCA diamonds right now in California can be as low as $3 a gram. Did you say one?
No.
Okay, then you're just giving me confirmation.
Yeah.
It's $3 a gram for crystallized THCA. Like, you know, the sauce can be as expensive as $28 a gram. That's the flavor. You take the sauce and you can flavor kilograms and kilograms of distillate. But even distillate is losing favor, and now we're getting essentially melted diamonds. Well, liquid diamonds, there's people fighting for the trademark. You could call people five diamonds, it's probably untrademarkable. But anyways, you don't even have to reflux it in a wiper or a spill. You can just decarb it, melt it from the diamond state. You can separate the terps first, add them back together later. It's kind of the new high-end 20% product that's taking over America. Now we're going to sell it. It's kind of the killer app in a vape pen. But anyways, so then distillate, flavored distillate, is kind of like artificially flavored distillate is becoming highly disfavored in mature markets. There seems to be a wave of predictable phenomena that happen in the market. When it becomes commoditized, the price is trickling down. You get a real separation between high and low quality, because high quality is hard to make. Doesn't scale as well as low quality. It's kind of why it's highly quality. And it commands like double to 4 times the price of a commoditized product. Sauce itself will never be commoditized because sauce is the unique flavor profile of the plant that produces it.
What's sauce?
So when you make live resin BHO, where you fresh freeze the cannabis before you don't even dry it. None of the terps that dry have evaporated. There's terps that just evaporate at room temperature. That's why it smells. In fact, the finest flavors that you associate with flower are going to be the most volatile products, and that's why you're smelling them. And then those are gone in the drying process. That's the irony. When you freeze it, your terpene content goes from 4% to 8%.
Preserving that flavor profile that ends up in that
Run at
sauce.
negative 60 Celsius, negative 80 Fahrenheit. The temperature's critical. Oh, can we get the rest of these cut sheets? I think they're in the box. Where's the pellet? Can we get the pellet calibrated pellet?
I'm going to keep cruising through some of the regulations. So there's been moving targets. You brought up legislation, right? There has been.
Is there any questions though?
But there's been legislation that's changed in time. Let's do Q&A in a second. I'll finish my cute little presentation here, and then we can then you get your whiteboard, and it's game on. So the moving target of quality, right? But at least having the ability to differentiate, understand what it is that you're producing at a high quality standard, so that you can be at the top of the market and have that brand that might retail for the top shelf versus something that's mid or low. Oregon recently had some change. I guess it was a year or so ago, but they kind of moved the target for some media filtration, and it's just kind of another example of government not doing what's best for business. Maybe it's for the safety of the consumer, which is a good thing, but the ability to produce a quality extract and not compromise the safety of a consumer is something that our company takes very seriously. I know Boris takes very seriously. So this is the same one the Oregon Liquor Commission was also involved with. This is the benzene case. There's a lawsuit, an active class action suit in Washington right now, where an extract in Washington was found with way over the limit of ppm on benzene. It was introduced in this case by an industrial gas supply, allegedly, and that supply, when you come out of a 100-pound tank and you go into a concentrate, it's obviously concentrating any impurities that are also in there. And in the state of Washington, where Boris is from, they had to scrap like $600,000 worth of product because it was contaminated. And so again, the ability to produce a high quality product that has the right purity standard that's safe for the consumer is very important to the sustainability of a business. Paying lawyers, maybe they'll get their money back, but maybe not. And then the Cureleaf example, I think, is another good one where we've got multi-state operators that are kind of backed by shareholder money as opposed to true brand recognition or revenues that are derived from sales of high quality product that are finding that they're not, what they're doing isn't sustainable, and it does seem that the more educated consumer is looking for that high quality extract. And one of the bigger problems that I see is that they don't have visibility into what makes or differentiates that high quality product. So it's very easy for a multi-state operator to just buy a billboard or buy trucks or buy advertising and try to influence consumer, trends. But at the end of the day, the consumer does want something that tastes good or that has a sauce that directly represents the flavor profile of a plant.
Can I say something? Somebody asked what is sauce, and I got on a tangent, but what you just said, something that accurately characterizes the flavor profile of a plant. Mm-hmm. Sauce is the liquid fraction when you precipitate or crash the diamonds, which are the THCA, out of a live resin extract. So you do an extract, you do it maybe 60 fresh frozen material, you're going to get all the cannabinoids, all the terpenes out of that material at very little dose. And then you have a bunch of things you can do with that extract. One of them is you can put it in a mason jar of Pyrex and let it just, it's a supersaturated solution with THCA. In a solvent of terpenes and 5 to 10% residual butane. Between 10 to 5% residual butane, the THC really likes to crash out and it starts to become less global. It becomes like molasses around 5%. 10% is really quite liquid like water. So you literally manipulate that concentration gradient along with temperature, and you can precipitate the THCA out in a multitude of ways. If you do a really fast crash, it's sugar, it's opaque, it's pop. If you do it really slowly in this region called the metastable zone, where it doesn't like to nucleate spontaneously, but it likes to aggregate onto nucleations, that's how you grow clear crystals. There's a bunch of people that sell this SOP as information. But our system is making an excellent precursor to that post-process. So the sauce is the liquid fraction. You can separate it just with gravity. There's a guy selling centrifuges. We sell the centrifuges. You can spin it off into mason jars. The diamonds become white, especially if you can crystallize them. That sauce fraction is terpenes, very accurate flavor profile of the plant. It's done accurately. That can be used, then you can stretch that to flavor all kinds of its own diamonds, or you can stretch it from 3 to 5 times to flavor discrete. You have a naturally flavored cannabis juice. And that's your high end. It's taking over everything. It's just that.
And
I just wanted to answer that question. It's about 50%, by the way, of the THCA still in the solution. So it's like terpenes, about 50%.
So butane derivatives.
The butane derivatives are removed at that
I
point.
mean, if you source all this through butane extraction.
If you what?
You're pretty much using butane extraction
That is butane.
for all your processes, right?
Yeah, because it scales really well and it's a wonder solvent for cannabis, basically. It's not very, I'm sorry.
Oh, did you introduce terpenes, or are those just native terpenes from the plant?
Those would be true. This, by the way, is my friend Jason, who's an expert in plant terpenes derived from cannabis hemp. That would be the naturally occurring terpenes in that biomass, in that cannabis plant, and nothing else. No botanical terpenes. Botanical terpenes are already the low end of the market. But they'll sell.
But and scalability, right?
They scale.
So when you're
We
looking
can
at
scale live resin production.
sure, you can go either way, but back to the sustainability of a business and not ending up like some of these companies that are struggling.
This is a MIDS company. This is a multi-state operator, Chad-based organization. This is my partner. I solved these guys. Machines, but they're Canadian owned now or something?
I couldn't tell you. I think the point is with that solvent-based extraction, you can scale something that is a high-quality, top-shelf product and do it in a responsible and sustainable way to prevent kind of what's happening with multi-state operators. And Boris here is at the top of his game when it comes to those extraction systems. And although Hawaii may not have that regulation in place yet, and there still may be some predispositions.
It's not true.
It's
The guy on the ground has been doing it for like at least 18 months, 24 months. Dylan, I can put you in touch with him. I'll give you my card. I have my business cards for everybody who's here and other stuff. T-shirts.
And maybe we could put together an educational, collaborating with Hawaii Cannabis Expo and Boris. We could come together and maybe he's got a system on Kauai right now that we could set up and maybe run with some CBD or hemp.
Better. I'll do you one better.
Go for it.
Like Yoda, no try, only do. Not maybe. We have a property on the Big Island, on the 20 minutes north of Hilo, and we are setting it up now as a showroom for individuals and a party space to do events like this, small community educational events that finish up with a party.
Cool, and we could help maybe take the Hawaiian cannabis community in it.
The founder of Big Island Ground. So this is a plug event. This isn't just like socialization. I want to get the plugs together who might actually buy our systems and set up this community network here on the islands, because we have it all over the West Coast.
And help educate the consumer base on what quality extracts are. And
consumer base is hard.
Well, but you
got to talk to the dispensary owners.
And start with the extracts. Start with the talent that's in the room. You've got people that are here operating.
We have some costs here too, though.
Can you educate me, because I actually don't know about Oahu. This is what I'm here for.
Yeah, well, there's
Who are you with?
I'm with the Carolina
Definitely was at your place yesterday. I was at your place yesterday. We were all there.
That was pretty much the presentation in a nutshell. Boris is really good with Q&A type stuff and engaging conversations. So since it's a small crowd, we can enjoy Boris and his skill in making really. He's famous for making some of the best equipment that makes some of the best extracts. And no matter what state it is, we just opened a location in Phoenix, Arizona, and people are proudly using these systems to produce the best. And that's what they want. They want to target top shelf product.
We represent the craft, the live resin, fresh resin, side of the business. But that's mostly because it's the most successful bet. We can make crude machines also. So we make crude machines as distillate. We do ethanol recovery machines. We invented the silver servant, which does a gallon a minute, 60 gallons an hour of ethanol recovery. We have Chinese centrifuges for ethanol.
But creating brands that last.
High end is where you establish your clout. Cureleaf has not established clout. They don't have respect for the marketplace. Jungle Boys, who's our client, who's buying a second machine for Miami now. They're in LA. They use our equipment, and they are at the highest end of the market, basically. I consider them the second most famous brand in the world.
Sure.
Cookies being first.
Easily, yeah.
For third, possibly 710 Labs.
Yeah, and I think Jungle, though, is unique in that it's quality.
Unique.
I mean, we know cookies because they're selling apparel and they're selling stickers. Nobody really associates cookies with the top shelf.
With the skill of 710 Labs.
Which is a California-based operator that runs our solvent, that runs his system.
Do they run your solvent?
Yeah, Brad is a.
So we work together. Because all of my systems need his solvent.
And they're known for craft product.
He makes a craft solvent product. He's doing secondary processing on the butane itself. We're doing distillation and remediation on the distillate.
Yeah, let me
dip tubes in his DOT tanks.
Let me throw one thing out there, because there may be some predispositions to butane and solvent in Hawaii that we're going to have to break.
When it's my turn, I'm sorry. When it's my turn, when you're done,
I love you.
I want to have a question and answer session where everybody can ask any question you want about why butane, is butane toxic, it's not organic, not true. So I want to actually share some facts that can be verified on Wikipedia so that we can begin to dispel myths and superstitions.
Let me help with
It's
some.
wonderful.
Let me help with some of those myths, though. One of the bigger issues, first of all, we all know that one of the number one reasons that butane has a bad rap is because there's a lot of product that's hit the shelf that hadn't had the butane remediated from it, and so you're left with something that has butane in it, and it shouldn't.
I would say fires is the number one.
Okay,
That's the number two.
Fire and explosions, sure.
And we have answers for both.
Yeah. So he's correct, but one of the ways that you can maintain a very high purity standard is something that I built my business on. Is not only, of course, testing your gas, but then also cleaning and decontaminating your cylinders, just like the dirty dishes in a restaurant. If you take a clean pot of coffee and you keep refilling dirty coffee mugs, you're going to end up with sediment accumulations, dangerous things accumulating inside of the cylinder that are not consistent with the purity spec that's on the COA. And so if you're not cleaning the dirty dishes, you're exposed to cross-contamination, you're exposed to accumulations and other dangerous things that have, again, given a bad rap to butane. By certifying every single cylinder and every single decontamination before each refill, we're able to maintain a purity standard that you just won't find with other companies, especially the ones that are being sued right now for benzene contamination. And by combining those, you can prove a clean chain of custody. We have an industry-leading cylinder document repository where you can type in the serial number of any cylinder at any time and pull all of those certifications up so that you can show a consumer or a regulator that what you're operating with is safe and meets the standard that's needed for that. I'm not going to bore you with all these details. He's got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about, but these are examples of those documents. And when it comes to, and then testing, we've got lots of ways to test. When it comes to chemicals, you're going to be looking at the same thing. You want to make sure that you're buying chemicals, ethanol, whatever it might be, that meet certain purity standards. A lot of organic operators in Hawaii that are proudly operating only with organic alcohols. We've got a kosher Pareve alcohol if anybody needs that. There's different specs. One of the most scalable and for extraction where you're pulling that solvent back out would be a denatured alcohol. That's something that's got a blend of heptane in it, like CDA12A. It's a chemical formula that's used in manufacturing of other food and beverage products. You're remediating out of the solvent, and it can be done very cost effectively. But again, you want to make sure that everything that you're buying is.
Like you're saying if you buy that denatured alcohol, you can distill it again at the same money basically. Versus
so it depends on what you're using it for. If you're putting it into a tincture, you would not want to be using a denatured alcohol. If you're using it simply for, well, a chemistry guru like this guy might be able to help you process that. But introducing the heptane into a denatured alcohol like CDA12A is a way of getting around the federal excise tax, which is $27 per gallon. And so the way that you can get an ethanol for a manufacturing application where you're not going to leave that ethanol in your finished good is to buy a CDA12A. It has heptane with a higher boiling point that cooks off, and so you get your extraction and you pass it for residual solvent testing after.
It's like 78C versus 96C, which is almost like getting ethanol out of water. Yeah. There's a couple passes.
That's it. I wanted to just touch on some of those important things, and I think in Hawaii what's really cool is that you guys are starting from it's like just the beginning, and so brands have an opportunity to differentiate themselves and make themselves known for being quality, and I think that can be done at scale with some really cool extraction tech, and Boris can share a little bit more about that.
Did I say something about that?
Here, I'm going to give the stage to you, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like the last thing you said, basically. So there seems to be a predictable pattern that forms in the process of transitioning from a prohibition culture to a legalization, regulated legal structure. And usually medical is in the middle. It's kind of the Trojan horse, just to be honest. It's like a funny wink fiction we all kind of maintain so we can smoke weed. I'm not discrediting genuine medical users of cannabis, which unfortunately are like suppressed. You can't even treat clinical research studies. But I'm just saying, as it works as a step on the path to this recreational lifestyle. What you have is a race to the bottom. So if you're a business operator, we need to know this because it's a predictable cycle. We know it's going to happen. And you just look at the California market. It started in 2018, I think, when it legalized. By 2019, it was ramping it up. And live resin went from a wholesale price of $55 to a gram for the highest end. California always had the highest end palate and willingness to sustain very high prices for like incredibly niche products. So there's a bit of a exponential distribution to price and quality. So like to get twice as good a quality, you're gonna have to pay $4. And that's where your 80-20 kind of comes from. Go ahead, whiteboard. So, wish we had an actual on-stage whiteboard. What time is it? How much time do we have?
I think we've got about 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah. I want to be questions driven, so I want to do an audience participation kind of thing where like I don't bore you guys by talking about stuff. You guys ask me questions and I try my best. Go ahead. Do I need that? You guys hear me? You guys hear me?
It's best if you write
Yes.
out.
Okay.
You keep talking.
Okay. So yeah, I'm going to try my best to do the whiteboard presentation with a handheld portable carry-on. It might be fun, it might be ridiculous, but you know, we'll see. Okay, so so this is a great opportunity to draw a graph. So if we have, let's see, how does it go? Something like this. If this is quality and this is price, then we're going to have a graph that looks something like this. It's kind of curved. So, you know, to get twice as good a quality, you're going to have to go, no, right here. You're going to have to go a higher price. And that actually makes sense because it's harder to make and it takes more skill. And then in a really ironic way, you get an inversion where when you go to distillate, you can take your worst quality biomass, the stuff you throw away, extract it with ethanol, some very aggressive solvent, get like everything out of it, and then post-process it, turn it into golden distillate. You can do that. It has a bad rap as being hot dog water, you know, but that's a little bit of haterism because it's just got a really good profit margin, honestly. Hot dog water is what they call it. It's the water that's left in the pot after you cook the hot dogs. That's what they call it in California market. So California is this beautiful test case that you can look at to see how this predictable path is going to unfold. You get really high prices, $3,600 a pound for weed in Humboldt, you know, back when Canadian stuff was cheap, and then that price just plummets to $1,200, hovers around $800 now. Every single legal licensed rec operation in California, and I shouldn't say every single, but many of them, are surviving by backdooring. Backdooring. They sell the legal weed out the back door by marking it as lost to mold or something in metric, and then they sell it in the black market. So that's like, that itself has to be factored in as a business owner as to like, how profitable is this? Is this even feasible? Like a real just, generally what we're getting right now is consolidation. So you get a chase to the bottom. Let's draw another graph. This is a little bit of just like business shit about the industry because we've been in it since 2014. Legalization happened in Washington and Colorado in 2013. And I graduated from college in like 2012. And I was like, wow, am I gonna like keep working my square job or am I gonna like do this weed industry thing? Because I'd already paid my dues to both. So I did both. And eventually the weed industry thing went out. But so if you have some kind of a progress of, I don't know, sophistication in a weed market, let's call it some abstract formula sophistication. Let's say it goes kind of like this. You know, it's going to take off exponentially for a while and it's going to saturate out. In different markets, they're going to do a similar curve. They're just going to do it shifted in time, you know. So LA started in 2018. I mean, California started in 2018. Hawaii's starting now, basically, right? So you got 5 years. Sure. Cali had medical in 96. Cali had medical in 96. So they had this super mature medical market that was operating essentially in the gray zone, like illegal federally, quasi-protected by state, which meant you're kind of subject to prosecutorial discretion whether they want to fuck with you or not. So everybody's getting away with it. So you got new entrants into the market because everybody's getting away with it, but now there's an oversupply of product and the price is coming down. So as this sophistication curve matures and what actually happens on a price scale, if this is price and this is time, is price of product comes down as supply increases because everybody's jumping into the market because now you don't go to prison for it. And so you can kind of expect that, like you bake that into your models. So So people are like, wow, I can make money for the next 2 years in this market. Thailand right now, huge rush. I suspect now with the transition to recreational, there's going to be a lot of energy here. But what I'm trying to propose actually as a solution to this problem, which is that your margins tighten predictably over time, is that you don't try not to participate in the race to the bottom mentality. And you try not to make money by competing on price and making up for it in volume, which is like the classic Chad mentality. It's like business 101, right? Like maximize profit, right? But what I'm proposing is that you actually destroy your own market by doing that. Because when you try to compete on price, it's just the easiest non-skilled thing to do. So everyone does it. Now you're in a race to the bottom on price. You're squeezing your margins there. And then, quality decreases with, the reducing margins, the reducing price. So what I'm proposing is that we get a bifurcation in the marketplace, where instead of having a single good, you have 2 tiers. So up here, let's say everything kind of sells the same because everything's brand new, we're still illegal, we just got legal. Or maybe not, maybe high-end product is way higher than custody distillate. When distillate came out in 2014, it was $100 a gram. $100 a gram. And the only people that made it was the Clear and the Clear scientists and a company called Workshop that he contracted to make it for him. Everyone else was freaking out. You gotta figure out how to make it. If you can figure out how to make this, you'll make so much money. And then a year later, everybody knew how to do it. Amazon was suggesting to me the glassware to buy. That's how popular that shit was. It's hilarious. Anyways, so distillate started at $100 a gram, and now you can get it for $1,000 a liter, $1 a gram. I mean, let's be generous and say it's like legal and metric, like $3.50 a gram, $5 a gram. It should be $100 a gram. I used to sell distillate for $12,000 a liter, $12 a gram. Anyways, you got another product, which is a dabbable live resin product, which ironically is easier to make if you pay more upfront for quality equipment, quality product, because it's fire in, fire out, categorically. You might be able to figure out how to fuck up some amazing quality weed, maybe, but it's almost like if you take buds, dry buds, and just run them with butane, honestly, you get this shatter that will like turn solid in the collection pot. You can't even get it out. It's all THC. But it really is fire in, fire out. But just like using all parts of the buffalo, there's ways to use all different categories of plant. You can even remediate toxic shit, but like we try to avoid that to begin with. Anyways, so what I'm proposing is we have 2 tiers in the marketplace where we have our mid-grade product, some kind of distillate. Initially, it's botanically flavored usually, and then that phases into this true cannabis terpenes derived from live resin, which is my job. I sell the equipment to make live resin. We teach people how to do it. So eventually that becomes the flavor, and you derive it from fresh frozen, really high quality product. Can you guys still hear me? Am I mic'd up? Good. Okay, so again, you can't cheat to make good product. You have to actually do the work. You have to have good strains. You have to like grow it well. You have to harvest it right. You have to, the chain of custody from harvest to extractor, it's critical. It's like, I tell people, it's like bananas sitting on the counter. Day 1, they're all bright yellow, maybe they're green. By day 2, they're bright yellow, and then they slowly get spotty, and then you can only make banana bread. Distillate is banana bread.
Distillate goes bad with time?
No, cannabis goes bad with time. Resin glands go bad with time, basically. They oxidize, the THCA turns into THC, it decarboxylates. The terpenes disappear, they're just evaporated, and so to make the highest quality extracts, you have to start with the highest quality plants, highest quality genetics, grown by the best growers, people who actually care about what they're doing. Harvested, bucked and shucked immediately. It doesn't sit for any time. Once you cut it, it's dying. It's starting to lose whatever it is you're after. So you literally in the field, you cut it, you bag it up or bucket it up with dry ice, you aggregate it into big dry ice bins basically, and you get into freezers. And then it's usually moved into 40-foot freezer truck trailers. Big operators like in California, like Santa Barbara, they use liquid nitrogen tunnels that are used for freezing fish, flash freezing. So it's a conveyor belt of a huge tank of liquid nitrogen that's filled with a truck. It sprays it as it goes down, And then you got a bunch of workers bucking and shucking. You take the sunnies off, take the buds off the stalk, and that's it. That's all. So you save trimming, no trimming. There's no drying because you're going to freeze it instead. You have to store it at 5 times the bulk. It's 80% water. And you have to run it at 1/5 the output because it's 80% water. But what you get in exchange is almost the highest quality extract that's possible. It gets almost all of the target molecules out, the cannabinoids and terpenes, because butane itself is a highly nonpolar molecule, and those are oils. Oh, I can draw pictures of butane too. Does anybody have any questions about this, by the way? So I'm trying to have this idea of two-tier market where you have a live resin product and you have a distillate product, for pens, let's say. But even though they both do a race to the bottom, this is always harder to make, and it's always more expensive to make. And it's going to be in shorter supply, which is going to define a higher demand, possibly. Anyways, another product, another tier, like rosin, that's like the most bougie product you can make. But it's also the hardest to make. It does not scale very well. It's kind of almost like, to scale it is to break it almost. So my hypothesis is that live resin butane, which stormed the market 5 years ago, like rosin is today, is here to stay. It's not going anywhere because its actual output quality is on par with live rosin, or even some might argue superior. There's some hurdles to overcome of perception, and there's a lot of superstition around science and math and freaking solvents, and so what I really believe in education with Lex about I had chemistry and physics, and I was an art major for 2 years, so I draw a great whiteboard drawing. I was a computer science major. So. Anyways, any questions about this before I move on to molecules? Business cycle, race to the bottom, consolidation. So what I'm also proposing is that after you have a very painful race to the bottom, that's so painful that lots of original operators go out of business, then you have a consolidation. We sell used equipment also. If you guys are looking for used equipment, I'm going to give you guys a bunch of information when we're done, but I have a partner that just sells used equipment out of the auctions, Cannabis Investment on Instagram. And he'll get you wipers for cheap to make distillate. He'll get you used Busy Bee falling films. You don't have to buy it from us. Buy it from like 70% from some auction company. But then we'll support it for you. We support all of our equipment for life in the field. If it's got a serial number, we can trace its origin. We don't care who owns it. We'll just support it for life. For what we manufacture, we place. Anyway, so there's race to the bottom, there's a consolidation, big amount of business, and then there's a consolidation, price recovers a little bit. And you get to some stable, hopefully. It's all influenced by current events. And you have multiple tiers of product. So, and this might be an 80% product, and this might be a 20% product, or something like that. Or 70, 20, 10 with rosin, or something like that. Anyways, that's the business case. I'm going to talk a little bit about science. Can you guys see this? Is this clear? You can use your phone, and you can actually zoom in with your phone, and you can if it's hard to see. Okay, butane is a molecule made out of carbon. It's got 4 carbons, and each one of them has hydrogens on it. And it's what's called fully saturated. So that means that every place carbon, thank you. So carbon wants to bond with 4 other orbitals, and hydrogen wants to bond with 1. And carbon can do crazy shit like double bond to itself. So the definition of an alkane, which is what butane is, so there's ethane, I think that's ethane is 2. Okay, so it's methane, common name, right? Methane. It's a C with 4 hydrogens hanging off of it. That's the most simple alkane. And then ethane is 2 carbons. Propane is 3, butane is 4, pentane is 5, hexane is 6. What we call paraffin, or candle wax, paraffin, it comes out of crude oil, it's a fraction. It's an alkane also. It's defined as being 40 or more carbons long. It's just a big fucking caterpillar of carbons that are never double bonded, and because they all have different boiling points, so they separate them in the columns. And every place is saturated with a hydrogen. It's very non-reactive. It's in a state that it really likes to be. It's in a low energy state. So they used to call alkanes paraffins. That's just a fun factoid. But butane is 4 carbons. Pentane is another common one, 5 carbons. It's got a boiling point right around room temperature. And then heptane is another one we use. It's 96 Celsius. But the ones that are popular for hydrocarbon extraction is butane, N-butane, and propane, 3 carbons. You know, we have a case to say you don't need propane. It's just higher pressure. It doesn't really get you anything.
You're in blends for a while, so is that kind
Yeah, so it's an effort to use blends. It's kind of driven by one of our competitors called ETS. And they like to mix propane into their butane, 70%, or just tell you to use 100% propane. Because it's very forgiving. You don't have to be super cold. It won't dissolve, propane won't dissolve chlorophyll, really. Butane will. So you have to get cold to not dissolve chlorophyll. And then when we get down to negative 60 Celsius, which is where we like to operate, it's so selective that all the water solubles won't dissolve. All the pigments, astaxanthins, chlorophylls won't dissolve. Pretty much all the lipids won't dissolve at negative 60 C. So pretty much all that dissolves is THC, THCA, CBD, CBDA, terpenes, and then we recover the butane, and that's how we get this it'll be like 93% THC, and the remainder will be terpenes, basically. And then you have a ppm on your butane, and there's a lot of techniques to get butane out. Propane has got such a low boiling point, it has a high vapor pressure at this STP, so it just is gone. But to make crystals and stuff, you need that liquid phase that N-butane gives you. There's another configuration you can get. Let's see, how does it go? It's like this. I think there's another configuration of butane called isobutane, which is kind of like a weird tetrahedron. This isn't the best drawing, but it's like still 4 carbons, but they're in a tetrahedron pattern now instead of being in a line. This is called iso. It's an isomer of butane, isobutane. Has a little, so N-butane will be about 18 psi at 18 Celsius, 20 psi at 20 Celsius. So room temperature, we're at like 18, 20 psi. Then when we get it cold with dry ice or liquid CO2 or a really fancy expensive chiller, we get it down to negative 60. It's actually in a vacuum. It's got like 1 or 2 psi absolute. So it'll read 28 millimeters, 28 inches of vacuum on a gauge. This has got a higher PSI. It's 34 PSI at 20 C, I think, instead of 18. Propane is about 125. 125 is freaking dangerous. So if anything goes wrong at 125 PSI, forget about the flammability of it. Just the pressure, moving broken bolts and clamps and lids around. We had a client actually in Washington that never changed their brass nuts on their clamps. And they have a wear out life. You know, they're brass and they deform over time. And they also harden, they work harden. And the fire department found a half of a brass nut, or a brass nut broken in 2, and that was the cause. And the video literally showed this thing. It's a 4-pack, we call them quad packs, of material columns, big 20-liter, this thing weighs about 500 pounds. And it literally lifts off the air, it flies in the air because one of the nuts broke, and the clamp popped open, and the pressure of the propane made it take off like a rocket. Butane wouldn't do that. Also, the way we run it at that temperature, it's basically the whole machine's at 0 PSI the whole time. Sometimes negative. Sometimes, the only time it's positive is when we make it positive with inert nitrogen to push the cold butane through the system because it has no pressure of its own. It becomes like water almost. You just got to push it. Yeah. But it's all certified. It's super certified. It's ASME. We have engineering peer review. We've got CRNs for Canada. We've got 300 systems in the wild. We have some of the biggest clients the biggest BHO manufacturer in the world is our client by metric, by published data. Raw Garden out of California. And they use a giant multi-rack with a butane falling film, 3 rooms of it. It's crazy. They could be like 3,000 pounds a day of fresh frozen. But they're kind of the originators of what's now become the live resin pen, which is this high-end, naturally flavored. Because what people realize is, for a while, everyone was just making sauce as fast as they could, because they needed sauce to flavor the distillate, because botanical terps are out. So they're producing all this isolate now as a byproduct, pure THCA isolate as a byproduct of making terp sauce. And they realized they can melt the isolate, and they don't even have to reflux it through a still, it just decarbs. And you can put it in a pen, it stays liquid. So now there's almost a move to get away from distillate because you can't guarantee the origin, like the source. It could be hot dog water, right, Jay? Hot dog water, disfavored. Liquid diamonds, high end of the market. And so people are putting that into a ceramic vape cart. Liquid diamonds flavored with its own sauce, or you still only need 5%, so you get like as much or more to flavor to extend to other products. And then you can make distillate and flavor it with the sauce. If you use ethanol to make your crude oil for distillate, it scales real well, like maybe 10 times. But you do not have terpenes because the ethanol's boiling point is 78 Celsius and the lowest terpenes are 78 Celsius. So you're actually recovering terpenes to just get the ethanol off. So
actually steam distill terp stuff separately is what I do.
Before you go?
Yeah,
wow.
It was steam distilled trim. And
that's
put
cool.
that aside, then you make our distillate and put together.
If it's fresh material, you'll make really crunchy shatter because you've removed the terps that make it sappy. So.
I don't make dabble or something like that. Just make that in the future.
Okay.
I'm on a medical.
I don't know what kind of scale you guys operate on. Like, I'm kind of doing a full sales pitch, but you might be home hobbyist or you might know the plugs. Well, you know the plugs because I was at your guys' place yesterday. It's a plug. Good cover. Okay, does anybody have any questions about solvents?
I'll keep up that.
No, but I want to talk after. What's your question?
So, as a consumer,
Yeah.
I kind of came in late, what should we look for to make sure it's safe, besides just buying it from the dispensary?
COAs, they're called COAs, certificates of analysis. They're done by labs to sell in any recreational market, like it's got metric or a tracking tool. It has to have COAs. And then you can look at the residual parts per million of the solvents. And the cannabinoid profile. Percentage cannabinoids, usually 70 to 93%, and the terpenes as well. I can show you some pictures. I wish we had an iPad here.
You
But
also start to get
it's kind of mind-blowing.
trust in
Let me show you what it looks like, because it's kind of paradigm shifting in a way that people don't know.
Is there any that is actually zero solvents?
Yes.
There are.
You can test zero solvent. Yeah.
That's the live rosin stuff is all.
That's definitely zero solvent. There's never a solvent to begin with. Water isn't actually a solvent in that case. It's a mechanical separation tool. So this is what the products look like. I mean, it's kind of like, almost like the quality is like transparent I mean, it's like absolutely gorgeous. So the solid phase that you see is the THCA. That's what crystallizes. And then the gooey, saucy stuff is the terpene sauce. And then they can be separated.
This is how you buy it.
It can be bought like this, or it can be turned into a pen that stays clear. And then it's like having an e-cigarette.
Oh.
Yeah, I think there's some around if you want to try one, honestly.
Zero solvents.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
The post-processing for hydrocarbon extraction
Well,
includes
CO2 is a problem. I can talk about that in a second. I'm going to let Cal answer that question.
Thank you.
No, Cal, you were had something to say?
It's not purging.
It's purging.
It's all about post-processing, purging, yeah.
For hydrocarbon extraction.
Yeah. So, the butane wants to evaporate. You just have to give it the opportunity to. So you do it in an oven under a vacuum, or you mechanically agitate it. It's called whipping.
Does that work?
And then that actually makes a product that's become super desirable called batter, which is stable. It's that kind of white, opaque stuff. There's like, it's kind of like making candy out of sugar and water. All the different candies are made from sugar and water and some color and some flavor. Right? They're tiny bit of flavor. All these different cannabis finishes are made from THCA or THC if it got decarboxylated. We try to prevent that, unless we're doing it
What's the
intentionally.
advantage of that of not decarboning it?
It'll stay crystalline. That's
The color separated.
But it has to be decarbed anyways to go through your lungs to be psychoactive. But that happens right at the consumption point
The
usually.
vape pens actually, they have nothing to decarb?
Vape pens are usually pre-decarbed because it wouldn't work if it was a crystal.
That's what I was saying, if it's just THC in the vape pen, I wouldn't
It
go
would-
to the work.
No, it stays viscous if it's decarbed. Yeah. But all you gotta do is so easy. You put shatter, diamonds, and sauce in a mason jar, and you close the mason jar tightly, and you put it in an oven, and you don't vacuum it, a vacuum oven. You just turn the heat up to your decarb temperatures, and it's sealed in a mason jar. It can't lose its terps. It could temperature denature them, I guess. That's why people separate them. And then they'll melt the diamonds by themselves, put the terps back in. Yeah, there's a whole lot of formula. It's become a formulation game now on the production side, and it's become a brand game on the retail side, because it's like turning into like fast snacks. Like branding is as important as product. So now it's starting to separate, where you have operators that don't necessarily just operate their own brand and distribute it. They may not even have their own brand, they're white labelers, and they have other brands that they produce for us. So it's kind of like an artist hosting on a record label. And then that is a fractured patchwork across the United States. So you have to reproduce that in each state. It's exhausting to own licenses, so you get a separation of very well-funded business people that host licenses and handle real estate and maybe construction, and then business operators that rent or lease or buy those spaces, and then they hire extract artists that actually make the product, and then there's some inherent, their interests aren't identical. So the owners usually want to maximize margin and race to the bottom. But what I propose is that you maintain 2 product lines, an A+ product line and a B product line, and make your money off that B product line until you don't anymore. But for real, as that market matures, I guess, in maturity, the costs of everything come down. So it gets cheaper to make A+ products. You start training your supply lines how to do their chain of custody so they don't fuck it up and destroy its value. And then you basically maintain some sort of mature market price that has a 20 to 40% margin in it, hopefully. Margins got driven down to 15%, I think, in Washington State. You might as well just operate a normal business and not have the pressure of regulation, because those guys are insane. They'll just come take your license away. I mean, I wouldn't do that. You could open like a vegetarian, vegan, Irish, some music and that. Does anybody have any questions? Because I don't want to bore you guys, but I'd love to talk about extraction and extraction machinery. Questions? Do you want to follow me on Instagram, and then you can look at my story highlights and see the equipment, how it's made, and the product. Here, I'll show. Here, I have cards for everybody. You already have cards.
I do, and I'm very good.
Let me give you guys.
We've gone our
We've got one already. There you go. Who you with?
We've done our hour.
You have any more questions? I'd really like to answer questions. Oh, I got more information. We have a property on Big Island with a 2-car garage that we're turning into a showroom for Busy Bee. It's going to be operational, so people on the islands that want to see a demo and see, why we think we're so great, will be able to just come on Hawaiian and visit us, stay the night. We'll have a party.
Are you able to get dry ice in the island?
My friend Lex right here, by the way, Solvent Direct, serves dry ice, but it's hard to get out here.
I tried to do dry ice box, I just never get it.
So here's actually a good factoid, is that
I will make it here, but I've never seen it.
our systems use liquid CO2, not dry ice. So we actually get dewars of the liquid, or cylinders. I mean, you could ship cylinders because they don't vent.
Yes.
You could source liquid at Matheson.
You do have compressed gas. Your beverage is using compressed CO2, which would be a
If you use Instagram,
solid state CO2
Instagram,
dry
you can
ice
see all the
is
pictures.
96% per
Thank
day.
you.
So the whole game is to get it from the faucet, from the
That's pretty
spigot,
clear,
to the
brother.
end user as quickly as possible. And you don't have the critical mass here or in Alaska and some other markets where we service cannabis operators to justify the production. Because your production, your conversion from liquid to solid is like 2.7 to 1. So you're losing 2.7 pounds of liquid to every 1 pound of solid that you're producing, and then that starts sublimating at 3 to 6% per day. It's just a zero-sum game. I don't know.
What's your name?
I don't know the islands as well as I should, but there is somewhere that's producing dry ice here.
There's 2 guys that made this, every time I put it together, it was sold out.
Okay.
Or it had sold out. I got it once, one time I got it.
Yeah.
That's a lot, I have to check. Well, like I said,
I would recommend. he's going to have, they call it the thermodynamic. So he might have some solutions for you, and then chillers, obviously. But,
No, I just want to say something about extraction equipment.
Sometimes just sit here and then they don't.
Yeah.
Do it later, sit here.
But we're on and off. Yeah, I mean, because I wanted to touch on a little bit about what you were saying about just solvents, like residual solvents, and then also logistics for equipment. There are a lot of logistics for running and operating our equipment and just extraction process in general.
We solve those for you.
And part of our system design is scalability, so we can have large clientele and support large companies in California, as well as smaller, more boutique, smaller scale extraction processes. So definitely logistics, part of why being an island having limited resources is trying to navigate large may not be as attainable. Chillers and different electrical heating methods and cooling methods could be applied. And then with something I always say about solvents and people's fear of solvents is that we use a lot of pharmaceutical products, and they use solvents of all kind in order to make those refined products. And we, trust their processes and their end products through testing and stuff like that. One aspect of the food beverage thing is caffeine. I feel like caffeine is in everything. Caffeine drinks are highly popularized, and many people have no problem doing that. But caffeine is extracted. Caffeine and chemicals you use to extract caffeine.
Butane and propane are both FDA approved for food processing.
And
Cheetos are expanded with propane,
so I feel like there is stigma behind solvent extracts, but when done properly in a controlled environment by people who are experts in the field, the end product to the consumer can be a safe and more refined medicine because you're not smoking or ingesting extra plant fibers.
Not even lipids.
Yeah, exactly. In the medical industry, it is harder to ensure that your end product is made responsibly or safe. But just like with brand recognition, people have to rely on brands because they think they can trust their end product, trust their process. And the medical industry still has a community aspect where you, as a medical patient caregiver, and you can build that relationship with your grower and supplier. And educating yourself and educating those people as well. So the end product is what we're all looking for. So